The following is a paid advertisement. The content shared does not reflect the beliefs or opinions of Three Eagles Communications, Headwaters Media, or Heart of the Rockies radio management or staff.
Hello, I'm Monica McCarthy, and welcome to the Living in Salida podcast. I am here with Tim Brown, who is a longtime Salida local. He is a longtime photographer and just an all-around Salida guy. So I thought he would be a good person to talk to get a good insight into what Salida used to be like and, you know, how it's evolved over the years and a few other things. So thanks for chatting with us, Tim.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's, where I want to start with everybody on this show is your Salida origin story. What brought you to Salida? How did you find out about it and how did you get here?
Well, I think my story is a lot like almost everyone here, it seems. You know, it's almost like a coincidence or something. But I was studying photography out east where I'm from in Rhode Island, and a friend of mine who was out here and had trained with a rafting company told me about the photo company that photographs the tourists going through the rapids. Okay. And it sounded very adventurous to me. I was way into the mountain sports and skiing out there and all that. Nothing like what they have here, but either way, he gave me a contact name and I called them and they basically just said, come to Salida, Colorado in May and come to this address and we'll take it from there. Okay. So I did that, and much to their surprise, I showed up and they're like, we talked to you in January and you showed up. And wow. He actually gave me the job on the spot because he was kind of blown away that this guy that randomly called him and he was like busy, it was the winter. And, yeah. And that I showed up. He was like, really? He goes, you got the job. Perfect. So that started. Yeah,
what year was this?
That was 1982.
1982. Yeah. Okay. So you came to Salida then, and then how long were you here initially? Were you here? Well, you know, I've been here 42 years since, so I never left. You never left. No. Okay. So you came then as a young lad. Absolutely. And
20 years old.
Okay. Nice. And, so what was that job like?
It was, for me, from a guy from Rhode Island, it was amazing. I mean, hiking into Browns Canyon with my camera. Yeah. You know, photographing rafts all day long. It was a dream job for sure. It was just beautiful. I loved it. Really did.
Where did you live when you first moved here in 82?
I had rented a place with my brother out in the highway. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The Highway 50?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gone now, but it was like a cinder block building. You know, okay. It was funny, but it was cheap and it did well for us.
Nice.
You know?
So you never left. And so take us through kind of briefly from 82 to now. What was the progression for you here? Well,
again, I was way into the outdoors, and as I knew I'd want to get in the whitewater after watching it and all that. So the next year I learned to kayak, and the photography they did was great, but to me it lacked a little creativity. So the next year I just decided to go out on my own and do my own thing and create my own business. So I did that. I contracted with smaller companies and I learned to kayak. So what I did is I would kayak along with the trip with my cameras and photograph them at all the rapids and all that. Oh, wow. Of course, it was back in the day of film, so you had to sort of beat the group home. I'd paddle up by myself, get home, get back to the raft company, and develop the film, actually do slides, do a little slideshow, and then take print orders from the slides. Wow. So, so I did that. I did that for about 12 years. Okay. As I got better at kayaking, that kind of became my specialty as a photographer. So I started doing more commercial work. Photographing equipment, clothing, the boat manufacturers, all that. And so I started traveling around the world, basically following kayak expeditions and being the photographer for mostly, again, for commercial. Nice. As well as editorial, too. So,
do you have a highlight from that time?
Oh, man. I mean, so many good times. You know, I mean, I love, you know, I went all over the world. Mostly my specialty was Latin America. And Chile was probably one of my more favorite countries. I guided there for about 6 years, just because it's a beautiful country, amazing rivers, and so Okay. But it was a great time for sure. You know?
And then Salida was always your home base. Then after
Salida's
that?
Always my base. I bought a house in 1990. Okay. And so that's when I, you know, semi-settled until then. You know, up until then I was living out of my van, you know, or camping or whatever, just kind of the raft guide life, which was great. But and I was really fortunate to buy that house, especially looking, what's happened now.
Yeah, that was my next question. So 1990, give us an insight into the real estate world at that time.
Pretty much every house was around 20 to 30,000.
Okay.
If you wanted to get a really nice house, you could spend 35 to 40.
Ooh.
That was sort of out of my budget. But the house I purchased was 28,000. One of those cute little brick bungalows.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first walked into the house, I had a duffel bag of my clothes, a duffel bag of my river gear, and I had my cameras. And it was like this big house, because I'd never had furniture.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, look at this. But it was, especially once again, looking back now, like, thank God. I mean, that's why I'm still here, why I can afford to live here, while I have a beautiful home. But And so, I mean, it wasn't an aggressive market at all.
Yeah.
And ultimately, one of my friends who was a raft guide, she bought a house on Sackett Street for $17,000. And so she told all of us, because none of us were people that would buy a house. We weren't even thinking of that.
Yeah, in your 20s,
but she was smart and understood loans and stuff. And she was like, you can buy a house for $17,000, and that's only like, put $5,000 down and your mortgage is $150 a month or something. It was like that. So all of a sudden, a bunch of us were like, really?
Yeah.
So, and the neat thing about the house I bought was the owner was like, if you put $20,000 down, then you can assume this loan, and the loan. So my mortgage was like $60 a month or something. It was ridiculous.
That is,
and and actually, the reason I was able to afford to put $20,000 down was because at that time I sold my company. I was ready to my rafting photo company.
Oh, okay.
I was ready to just do commercial work. I'd gotten to that stage.
Yeah.
And so the money I sold the rafting company for bought me the $20,000 down payment and a Toyota pickup truck.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, yeah.
And then you were all set in Salida.
And it made it really safe because, again, the thought of having a mortgage scared me. Like, I have to make a payment every month. It's like, wow. Even though it was $63, it was just it was the big deal,
Yeah.
But once again, thank God, right?
Absolutely. And you just kind of kept leveling up over the years, right?
Yeah. I fixed that house up, sold it in 2006 for $350.
Okay.
Built another house, eventually sold that for a bunch. Then I went downtown, bought that cheap, fixed it up, sold that.
Yeah.
So just kept doing that. And, I would live in each place for around 5 years. And so as Salida grew every 5 years, the value would triple or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how it's been for a while here. It seems like. So.
And it was fun because back then in the 90s, so many of my outdoorsy friends did the same thing. It was all of us were buying these old houses and fixing them up to wow, you can fix a house up. And we were all learning how to do that.
Yeah.
But it was really neat to see. And we were boaters and kind of dirtbag outdoors people. So, so all we could afford was little shacks. So it's kind of neat to see where they're all now. But a lot of us all bought these little railroad shacks.
Are a lot of them still in Salida?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So
it really just, you never got too, I don't know, you felt like it got too big or?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I really haven't seen, I don't feel like, the real growth to me has been post-COVID. I mean, certainly things slowly grew. The 90s is when, property values started going up a little bit, but not a lot. I remember my neighbor was he was leaving and he offered his house to us for $65,000. We were like, $65,000. I'd never spend $65,000 on a house. No, it's like, oops.
You could go back in time, right?
And it seemed like that was the first jump. It was like everything was $25,000, and then everything was $65,000, and then it was like $110,000. Sort of slowly went up through the 90s, and then once you got into the 2000s, things went up to around $200,000 or $300,000.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because Salida at that point there isn't a whole lot going on commercially, right? I remember hearing stories of downtown being boarded up.
Especially the winters.
Okay.
I mean, the 80s, Salida was boarded up year round. I mean, we were, careful what you wish for, because all those days we're like, imagine if we could, have a gallery, and wouldn't it be cool if there was restaurants and stuff, and then here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
and a bunch of us sort of artists, we did start renting spaces because it was so cheap, and we would fix them up, and that's sort of how Art Walk started too.
Yeah.
because it's why Art Walk was so popular back then, because it was like this funky little kind of town. Mm-hmm. And here's all these, artists that have fixed up spaces and having really neat crafts. And Art Walk at first was huge and really popular because it was just unique,
Yeah. So explain for anyone who's listening. So what exactly is Art Walk?
Well, it's basically all the galleries will have a large opening that weekend, as well as any business could host an artist. So a restaurant, a coffee shop, any business could say, hey, I'm going to host an artist, and they can hang in my shop too. Yeah. And so then when Art Walk weekend came, people would go through all the stores and restaurants and art galleries, and there'd be art everywhere. Yeah. And everybody would have openings that have food and music and all that. So nice. It was really fun. It got a really great crowd.
Yeah, and I know it's still going on. I think they moved it to October this year, right? Yeah. Are you part of that?
Yeah, I'm always involved to some extent. I mean, now that my studio's out of town, it's different, Yeah. But usually one way or another, I do something. And I would like to get more involved too. It'll be interesting to see what happens in October. Our Art Walk has sort of, in my opinion, struggled a little bit over the years. Okay. And my thought is every town has like an Art Walk now, And so, for one thing, you're competing with Vail and Summit County and Aspen, that they have a lot of money to advertise, and I think just what's happened is people have a lot of choices now. It used to be, again, a very unique thing, but
it's kind of changed over the years.
Yeah, and so hopefully we can revive it. I'm glad they're trying something different in October too. So it'll be good to see what happens.
And I know, so in terms of other stuff that you're involved in Salida, because it seems like you've got your finger in a lot of little pots around town. I know one thing I heard about moving the Art Walk was it was really close to FibArc, and you're part of FibArc as well, right?
Yeah. And because Art Walk was the next weekend. Yeah. Which was, it made June just, actually the month starting FibArc really exciting. You've got FibArc, then Art Walk, then 4th of July, then the Beer Fest. Yeah. I call it the month of drunk.
I mean, it doesn't sound like you're wrong.
But so it's a good thing. But I think Art Walk just needs sort of a shot in the arm. Gotcha. And again, they're up to much more heavier competition now. So that makes sense.
But FibArc are first in voting on the Arkansas Festival. That's really, really big here in Salida. I know. You're part of the planning committee for that?
I was the Commodore in 2021. Okay. And that's basically every year they ask someone to be the Commodore, which is kind of the ambassador of Salida for the weekend. Gotcha. It's more of a symbolic thing. You get the little sailor's hat and you do speeches and wave to people and help out a little bit, but it's more of a symbolic, hey, this is the ambassador of Salida. And FibArc too, FibArc, it's all about the boat race, Yeah. So the Commodore is obviously kind of a Marine, a sailor term. Mm-hmm. But, it was a great honor because they have always chose the Commodore who's done a lot for the county one way or another, has given a lot back or done something.
Yeah. So. No, that's kind of what I was getting at is obviously you were chosen for that position for a reason. You've been here for a long time and you've given back to the community. So. Yeah.
I think, of course, FibArc being a river thing. River's been a huge part of my life. Yeah. And then as a photographer, I've helped promote this area since the day I was here and helped promote FibArc. And so I think that was a big part of them asking me because of my contribution as a photographer to advertise and draw people here.
Nice.
Hopefully I didn't do too good a job.
Yeah, that was actually another thought I had. Did you do too well, Tim? It seems like there have been, like you said, since COVID, a lot more people coming to the area. So. Yeah.
And even with all the Visitors Bureau work that we were doing back in the 90s, it was slow going. Mm-hmm. It definitely was. It's taken a long time, and in a lot of ways too, we were always like, well, I feel like I talk to a lot of my friends now that might even be a little apprehensive about the growth, but I'm like, we had it good for so long. Mm. A lot of these other towns, Breckenridge and Summit County and some of the other larger ski towns exploded a long time ago. And and all the good and bad that goes along with that. But Salida just never did. It was like, wow, it's got everything. Why hasn't it? So, it took a long time. And maybe, social media, the internet has a lot to do with that, and population, and Salida being an amazing place,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm grateful for the times that we had where it was a neat, quiet little town and we kind of owned it. Yeah. But also it's also, to me, I came here for the mountains, and most people do, and none of that has changed. So to me, it's as good as it ever was. And it's awesome to go downtown and have sushi and great restaurant choices. And we got to deal with maybe a little more crowds, this or that, a little more busyness downtown. But people come here for a reason, and it's an amazing place. And I love living here.
Yeah, good. So it doesn't sound like you're going anytime soon.
Oh, no. To me, it keeps getting better,
Absolutely. Well, let's see. So to switch gears a little bit, you've talked a bit about your photography business in the past, but what exactly are you doing now?
Well, about 8 years ago, I sort of stumbled upon wet plate collodion process, which is a more common name is Tintypes.
Okay.
And it's the process from the mid 1800s, the way they did photography back then. And it's all hand done, hand making a print on a piece of metal. It's really a beautiful process. And I found it about 8 years ago, did a workshop and fell in love with it and decided this is what I want to do. So
okay. So it seems that's switching gears quite a bit from traditional photography,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, especially coming from digital, which is where photography had evolved to. It's very different, and I really love it. It's a very intimate, personal experience with the client, and you're making something by hand. It lasts hundreds of years. I'm using this old equipment that's 170 years old. These beautiful old lenses from Europe, and it's just it's a very compelling portrait, and it's a really unique experience too. I mean, the client gets to, see how the photography worked that day, and I take them in the darkroom, they watch it develop. So it's really a neat and kind of a rare thing too. Yeah.
And then it's really the old fashioned way where you have to hold still for several seconds, right? 2 to 3 second exposure. And,
it's really neat. It's a pretty special and rare thing.
Yeah, you've got some beautiful. Is it mostly portraits that you do?
Yeah, I do mostly portraits. I play around with a little fine art and landscapes, but mostly what I do is portraiture.
Okay. Yeah. So if somebody was interested in doing that with you, where would they go?
Well, they could find me online at my website, which is timbrownphotography.com, or the business name is Salida Tintype, which is also salidatintype.com. So they could go there and see examples and schedule appointments and all that.
Okay. I think it's fascinating. So where did you get the camera for that? Because it seems like that would be really hard to do.
Yeah, the cameras aren't too hard to find, but the lenses are because they're, 107 years old, and most of them didn't make it this far just because they were, they got scratched or molded or weren't stored properly or thrown away, because those first lenses had their problems. They make a beautiful image that I love, but if you compare it to a modern lens, they have all kinds of issues,
Yeah.
So getting hard to find them where they're still clean and intact, the glass is clean and all that. So, and again, they're from Europe and they're made by hand. They're just beautiful. So they're rare, and they're not cheap either. They're pretty expensive, because you're also paying for a kind of an antique, a vintage aspect of it too.
That's cool. And do you still do weddings? I know you.
I do, but I do Tintype weddings.
Well, yeah.
Exactly. So I bring my little darkroom to a wedding event and create Tintypes there.
Yeah, that's cool. That would be a really interesting experience. If you guys have never seen this before, it's gorgeous. It's kind of what you would picture from an 1800s photo with the black and white still image. I'm not doing it justice, but anyway, it's gorgeous if you want to check it out. And so right now your studio is in your home. You mentioned that before. You recently, in the last few years, built an add-on to your home to house this space, right?
Exactly. And the reason I started off downtown, I had a storefront on F Street, which I loved, but I really wanted to take this Tintype process to the max experience. And back then they didn't have flashes, so they used natural light. So they had huge windows. On one wall would be a wall of glass, and then even the roof would be glass. And that's what they used for the light. And I couldn't do that downtown in my space. It just wouldn't work. So I decided to move outside of town and find a space where I could build a natural light studio, which is what I did. And it's only the second one built in this country in the last 100 years. So there's only 2 natural light studios in this country, and one is in Salida.
Wow, it's gorgeous. And if you're interested in seeing that, we actually have some photos of it online and some video, because Tim's house is for sale. It's a gorgeous home just outside of Salida. What is it, 8 minutes?
Yeah, well, it's technically like 2 miles from downtown Salida. So
not far. But you do feel like it's the best of both worlds, truly, because you are not far from town, but you feel like you're really far out of town because you just go down this private driveway on the end of a cul-de-sac, and it is just gorgeous on about a little over 2 acres. And tell us a little bit more about your house.
Well, it was a custom-built house by a couple about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And it's a straw bale house.
Okay.
Which is a really neat kind of older process that makes the house very healthy and super insulative. Yeah. So, like the walls are thick, full of straw bales. And so the R value of the walls is huge, and has a lot of sun exposure. So it really keeps the house cool in the summer and keeps it warm in the winter. And it's also, again, it's a healthy home. It doesn't have all the toxic materials that they use for insulation and other building materials. Wow. So it's not only is it a healthy house that breathes, but it also insulates very well. And it also has just a really neat feel. The inside walls are of plaster and a lot of round around the windows, and just sort of has a neat kind of custom look to it.
It does. Yeah. It's really pretty on the inside. And there's a lot of space. We're talking over 3,800 square feet. We've got 3 beds, 2.5 baths in the main house. Plus there's that studio we just talked about that he recently added, and a little office space. So the inside has a ton of living space and bedrooms. And then you have a guest house as well that you can rent out. Right.
Yeah, in the garage, there was a finished room in there. It's kind of like like a little playroom or something. I'm not sure why they built it, but it had a bathroom. So the garage is huge. It's an extra large size garage. Yeah. So I was able to put on a bedroom and turn it into a little kind of a mother-in-law suite. Yeah. Which is great for that, or even I've been renting it. So it's, essentially, one-person rentals, especially in this town, are hard to find, and it's a beautiful space. So it helps with income and have somebody in there too. Yeah, because you built it. It's a garage on the side of the home, and so this entrance to the apartment is separate. So you really could have a renter there and not really see them. We never see or hear each other at all. There's no like adjoining walls or anything. Yeah, so that's private. Really what you want.
I know a lot of people who want to be able to, have a home and then also rent out a space. So that's a great way to have some extra income while you're carrying home. So,
and the studio that I built, I built it in a way so it could be like a master bedroom or something because it has this huge window. It's really beautiful. The views are amazing of the mountains. Yeah. And also you can see stars at night. It would be an incredible bedroom too. And that's kind of how I planned it, because obviously I didn't want it to be too photographic specific. And, if you take everything out of there, it's just a big, beautiful empty room with a huge window, and it's got a deck too. So, and it's attached to where the master bedroom was. So it still has, actually has another room that could be the bedroom, which I use in my office, and then a very large master suite bathroom. And,
the ensuite.
And I guess master closet or something.
But, the walk-in closet there, and you have a window in there.
And, I love the space. I really don't want to leave, but my kids are gone now. It's 3,800 square feet. It's just a big house for one person. I just sort of feel like a king up there. And as much as I can still live up there, it's just like, this is kind of big for me and a lot to take care of and all that. And so my plan is to downsize and build another studio.
Okay. That's lovely. I like that plan. Well, so if you're interested in seeing that property, you can reach out to me. My information is in the show notes below. It is 6395 Terrace Circle. You can also just Google that address and look at all the photos there. But it's a gorgeous home, and it's definitely worth seeing. I feel like we can verbalize it all we want, but you definitely want to see it in person. It's a gorgeous property. Well, so anything else you want to add about your experience living in Salida? You've had a few decades here, so what?
Yeah, 42 years. and like I earlier said, I think it keeps getting better. You know, it's
you think so?
Yeah, I do. It's a small community. You know, for one thing, just where it's at. You know, the mountains, the rivers.
Yeah.
The climate. It's, you know, up high it snows and dumps, and in Salida it's sunny. The snow always melts.
Yeah.
I've had the property for 5 years, and because I have this longer driveway, I thought, I'm going to have to have it plowed all the time when the big storms comes. And I have not had to hire a snowplow once.
That's right. Even the big dump we had, I remember it was right before we put your house on the market, or right after we put it on the market, and we were worried about it, and it ended up being fine.
Yeah, just, you know, I have a truck, and you drive over it a couple times, and also knowing, hey, it's going to melt in 2 days, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, there's a small community here. People are just super friendly. I mean, that's what drew me to Salida at the beginning. Just everyone is just smiles and waves, and it's sunny all the time. You know, my kids grew up here. I mean, what a place to raise children, I think. I mean, it's just the schools are great. You know, it's a super safe community. Skiing, the outdoors, everything, sunny days. It's almost like Disneyland like. You know, it really is. It's almost too good. You know, in some ways, my kids are spoiled just because they grew up in Salida.
Yeah.
Know? And they of course, appreciate it a lot more now than they come back. And then they've been out in the world like, wow, this is a really unique place.
Yeah, it is.
And Salida hasn't exploded like a lot of the larger ski towns. You know, it's still a small town. It's still friendly. It still has its quiet time off season, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely the off season too.
And I think that's one of the secrets, I think, or if you're a local, you know, if it's like, okay, maybe it's busier on the weekends in the summer or during the holidays for skiing, but if you're a local, you know the good spots. You know when to go. I have my special places on the river and mountains and where no one would be, just like they never have. You know, you just need to go at the right time.
Yeah, and there's enough space around us. Yeah, you can kind of you can spread
space
out. I definitely plan my hikes around when, you know, there's certain places I won't go on, for example, a holiday weekend, but, you know, there's other options.
Yeah, I mean, there's millions of national park and national forest and BLM land everywhere. You know, there's room for all, for sure.
There's room for all.
And the accommodations here are great too. There's so many good restaurants and lots of things to do. And it's also been attracting really amazing people coming here too. You know, it's not as rural as it was, and just people that are creative and have ideas and bringing really good business here and bringing themselves here that makes Salida a better place, you know.
I think that's true. I was actually just telling that to somebody who recently bought a house here. And, you know, I think if you come, you know, come and contribute to the community in a positive way. Absolutely. I think that's really the way it is. And I think a lot of people who are drawn here do that.
Right.
So as long as that's the case, I think we're in a good spot.
We have a brand new hospital. I mean.
Yeah.
It's attracting just some amazing people. I think, you know.
I think so too.
So,
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, Tim. I appreciate your insights into this community and how it's evolved over the past few decades. And again, please look in the show notes. I'll have some more information about how to get in touch with Tim Brown and find him on SalidaTintype.com. And if you're interested in scheduling a portrait so you could have your own gorgeous photo that will last well past your lifetime.
Absolutely.
Right.
500 years.
500 years. There we go. All right. Well, thank you for listening. This is Monica McCarthy. I am a realtor in Salida, Colorado, and this is the Living in Salida podcast. Please look at the show notes below to contact me if you have questions, to reach out to me about living here, buying here, or wanting to be on the show. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.